I'm going to go on a limb and make a shamelessly bold statement without any apology whatsoever. You know, we've all heard about the Sex Pistols and the Clash and the Damned, and while they may have represented what is considered to be the first wave of British punk, I will go to my grave putting the UK Subs on that very same pedestal. And while the UK Subs may not have released their first album, Another Kind of Blues, until 1979, amidst what is considered to be the second wave of UK punk, they were, in fact, playing as far back as 1976 when all those other bands were first starting. So by 1979, the UK Subs were a well-oiled machine that was releasing some of punk's best singles at the time. And if you want to get real specific, the beginnings of that band go back even further than 1976. And if you want to get really technical, lead singer Charlie Harper's musical career goes all the way back to 1964, where he started off as an R&B singer. That continued all the way through the early 70s as the leader of the Marauders, which were part of the pub rock scene of London. And yet, despite being 10 years older than the oldest member of the Sex Pistols, Charlie Harper changed it all up the moment he was introduced to punk for the very first time in 1976, and he has never stopped. Because unlike the Sex Pistols or the Clash, which eventually came to an end, the UK Subs have never gone away, playing more than 200 dates a year prior to the pandemic and releasing a couple of dozen albums along the way. Charlie Harper has just released new music on Time and Matter Records with his new band, Charlie Harper and the Submachine. And they're on sale now, and like everything else the man has ever done over the last 76 years, it's a frickin' ass kicker. And last January, it was announced that the UK Subs were busy recording a new album entitled Reverse Engineering on Cleopatra Records. Could it be their last album? You're about to find out. This is my conversation with one of the most respected names in punk rock history. It's Charlie Harper of the UK Subs on Baxy's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Oh, well, you know, I don't know what it is. I think I might be getting too old for technology, Charlie. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, my much younger wife is the boss of all this. All I can do, I can type, so you know, that's about, you know.
It's so funny. I between the technology and the time zones, I don't know what I'm worse at: figuring out how to get an international phone call through, or figuring out what the time zones are. Because I'm just as bad.
Yeah, well, that's what Yuko done. She kind of misread the times, so that's why we were a bit late.
Yeah, that is.
Never mind.
Well, it
spread a bit of chaos.
That's quite all right. It is a real pleasure to talk to you, though. I mean, you with all the reading I've done and all the research I've done, and being a UK Subs fan for a long period of time, you know, there are very few people that kind of have gone through all the many years that you've gone through, and their reputation has gotten better over the years as opposed to worse. You're one of the few people whose reputations has actually improved over the decades.
Well, that's because all our critics have died. Yeah, there used to be a lot in the old days.
Well, that certainly helps. I would imagine.
Thing is, you know, like the rock journalists and the people around the kind of scene. I mean, they were from the old rock thing, you know, in the, like early 70s, and they were worse druggies than the punks were. You know, so, yeah. And, you know, some of the good guys have died, of course.
Sure. But on the other hand, you've also outlasted, I mean, the UK Subs have outlasted nearly all of your contemporaries. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of, at least punk, by the way, and I know you go, you know, much further than that, the Sex Pistols couldn't last, the Clash couldn't last, the Damned has gone through, you know, 4 or 5 different type of changes in their approach. I mean, from punk to goth and whatever it is. But you guys have stayed. Yeah. You guys have stayed. Yeah, I mean, true.
You know, someone will come into a band, and you know, we kind of go. You know, Lee and you know, a guitar issue. You know, like sometimes you just have to go with them. You know, see how it works out.
I know when I first emailed you to request whether you'd be available, you said that what else does an out of work musician have to have to do with this time? And the way I thought about it, it's like this is probably the longest that you've been. I don't want to say inactive because you got new music coming out, but this is probably the longest you've been off the road, maybe since the '60s.
Oh, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. The thing is, I'm loving it. Yeah. I mean, I do, the talk yesterday, we had a Zoom meeting yesterday, and what was it? Yesterday, Thursday, yeah, we have our group Zoom meeting, and then we have a punk quiz. The Test Tube Babies?
Yeah.
Peter and the Test Tube Babies?
Yeah.
Well, he organises a quiz night. And so there can be like 7, 8, 9 of us at this quiz night. And, of course, we talk about stuff. And the big news is Arthur Lurker, who's kind of better known as Artro Basic. And he's given up, he's retired from 999, I think. Oh, no, he's given up the Lurkers, his own band. But he's still playing with 999, is that right? Yeah. And, so it's time I retired, really. But they won't let me.
Well, I mean, is that something that you would I mean, you say you like the time off. Is this something you would consider, or are your commitments moving forward a little bit, too much in front of you right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of roundabout. You can't get off. Like all the gigs we had, like this year, have been put over to next year. So as soon as next year comes, I think we're off in November this year. And, and then we don't stop. And I don't think I'm strong enough anymore. And especially, it's okay getting on stage and jumping around, and it's just the traveling. The traveling's hard now.
Yeah, I know you're going to be turning, your birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks, and if I'm not mistaken, you'll be 77.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. I'm gonna be 55 this year, and I'm already seeing 10 more years, and I'm done. I don't want to do anything that even feels good at 65.
Good on you.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking that's about as much fun as I'm willing to have.
My wife keeps saying, if you retire, you'll die.
Well, let's.
Yeah, people over here, the English people have a hard life. Scots, Welsh, and Irish have a harder life. And as soon as you retire at 65, and maybe they have 10 years and they die.
I've had some of my friends say, "Well, you'll be bored in retirement," and I try to explain to them that I think they kind of underestimate my desire and ability to do nothing at all. I think that's where my big talents lie. So I want to talk to you about a couple of things here, because obviously there are things going on with the UK subs. There is apparently a new album which has been completed, and it's called Reverse.
Yeah, it is now.
It's called Reverse Engineering. Tell me about the new album.
Well, I have to admit, even though I kind of went into a studio and sung my bits, and that was the easiest part. But putting it all together and trying to kind of, like telephone calls to the studio, to the engineer to say, do this, do that. And, this took, like weeks, to and fro's. Oh, that's up too much. It's got to come down on all this, and this needs this. And, it was just hard work, not being there, But apart from that, it's come out pretty well. And the record company, which is Cleopatra, up your end, over in Los Angeles, they love it. So seems like we've done the job.
I know that you've gone through, naming all of your albums alphabetically. Now you're almost kind of going in reverse order. And the name of the album is Reverse Engineering. Is that Is that kind of a nod to the fact that you made it to Z and now going back to A?
No, although I did have a good idea for A. I can't remember it now. But, no, Alvin just came out. The bass player came out with that idea, and I kind of asked him to do a reverse engineering song, but he didn't, because it's quite an interesting subject.
Tell me about what his idea was.
Well, it was something to do with going back, harking back to our past, which I think, is probably only my... I kind of done that with my songs. They're very kind of 77-ish,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think any other songs kind of do that. They're a bit 80s, 90s.
I was doing a lot of reading up in the last couple of days, getting ready for this interview, and it struck me because everyone thinks of punk starting in 76 or 77, and then I was reading some article of some writer making a big deal with the fact that you were 32 at the time that you started to get into punk, 10 years older than like the oldest member of the Sex Pistols.
No, I was 10 years older than everyone. I mean, there were quite a few teenagers as well. I mean, my band then were like teenagers. Like they were kind of 17, 18, 19 years old. I took them to the Roxy Club, and lo and behold, they just turned around to me and, we want to be a punk rock band, and I wasn't invited.
But what was it about punk rock at the time that said something to you and said, okay, you know what, maybe I do want to get into this?
Well, it was just the go for it attitude, don't care, just go for it, and the energy about it. It was nothing about the youth rebellion, because I went through that twice once with rock and roll when I was very young, and then the other time, in the kind of early 70s, I suppose, 60s into early 70s, Jimi Hendrix and the Cream, Eric Clapton, the whole blues scene, the beat scene in the 60s. So to me, punk was a kind of reincarnation of that. It was the same kind of thing. So I was kind of ready for it. Although it was a pure accident that I kind of got into it. As I say, the band went off and become a punk rock band. And that weekend, my flatmate had gone to a party and bumped into a guitarist, and there was Nicky Garrett just come down to London to join a punk rock band, and my flatmate said, "Oh, my flatmate's looking for a guitarist," and Nicky didn't want to play any R&B or rock and roll, so we started from scratch, and so that was it. It was almost like an accident.
A lot of people in the States, have probably heard of the pub rock bands, but they're not really aware of that scene, which happened literally right before punk. But I mean, there were bands.
I was really going strong in them days. I wasn't signed. You had to be, you had to live in Southend to be signed. You had to be a Southend band. It was like that was it. And so some of the London bands who, although they were great, they weren't quite, Dr. Feelgood and Eddie and the Hot Rods and bands like that. They really, sailed away. And but I had a band, and we were filling pubs night after night after night. So I had a lot of experience in playing and audiences.
So by the time the Marauders become the UK Subs, were you playing like original songs at that point, or were you still playing cover songs?
No, the Marauders played only kind of R&B, Chuck Berry songs, Bo Diddley songs, just it was kind of blues, but very rock and roll and dancey blues like Chuck Berry. And then in between that, there was a Subs where we were kind of a hybrid. We still played a lot of R&B, but changed to, instead of R&B covers, to covers like Jonathan Richman's, Roadrunner. That's
Yeah.
the one I was trying to think of.
Right.
Instead of Bo Diddley's Run Road, we went to Jonathan Richman's Roadrunner, and quirky little songs like that. Kind of slow, I've been writing about it, and it's kind of a difficult, the metamorphosis is like quite difficult as we've done it. It was quite slow, really. I mean, it was over about 2 years. But then when Nicky came along, he didn't like playing any 12-bar stuff. And we sat down, over a couple of nights and wrote a set.
So in those early days when punk was starting, I know there was like obviously you're talking about like the Modern Lovers and Jonathan Richman, but you guys were probably getting more exposed to American bands than I think even Americans were. The Ramones and the Stooges and MC5. I mean, those were pretty important bands for kids in England at the time when Americans weren't even...
That's all there was. I mean, you went down to clubs like before the Roxy opened. It was the same premises was a lesbian club called Shagaramas, and I used to go down there quite often. On a Friday night, they kind of, if you look right, they'd let you in. If they knew that you were not going to cause trouble, you looked a bit gay, they'd let you in. So, but that's all there was playing. The Stooges, all those bands. I'm trying to think of Jane County, Wayne County and the Electric Chairs. Velvet Underground was big. Television was huge. Like television was played all over London, in every club. I think Marquee Moon was a big club song. And so was Jonathan Richman's stuff.
And again, it's weird to me because Americans were not as exposed to that as they was in the UK. I mean, like you would never ever hear any of those artists on American radio.
There was a kind of New York scene. That was a kind of, even Iggy and all those bands went to New York.
And then you also had the David Bowie connection, which kind of ties a lot of that all together too. Right. Well, that's where a lot of punks come from. We were kind of big Bowie fans, and then Bowie had a connection with Iggy Pop, and then Lou Reed. Yeah, that was that was a scene where punk came out of, kind of thing. Although I don't know, there's some kind of thing about Malcolm McLaren going to New York and wanting the Sex Pistols to be the New York Dolls, but a lot of people were doing that even in London, because we saw the New York Dolls quite early, and it was said that everyone who saw the New York Dolls formed a band, and that's just about true. So, I mean, they blew everyone's minds. They were just amazing. Funny enough, it's our record, it's our CD in the car right now. It's funny. I've seen the video of them on the Old Grey Whistle Test, and Bob Harris, just being like dismissive of the New York Dolls, calling it mock rock, and just being such a jerk about the New York Dolls. But everybody in England's watching this band thinking this is the coolest thing they had ever seen.
Yeah. But Bob Harris is a kind of country stuff is his thing. He wasn't involved in rock or and then punk rock. He was just he still does a country thing on the radio here.
When punk did hit, and and I'm talking about everything from the Sex Pistols on. It seemed like there was a feeding frenzy where all these record companies were signing one band after another, but yet.
Oh yeah, it was like a feeding frenzy. You're right there. Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to everybody from like Steve Diggle from Buzzcocks and Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers, and there's some like a lot of it was done themselves, but the UK subs seem to be, I don't want to say on the outside, but it was like you were the last of that group to put out an album, and it just seemed like that it I don't want to say it came too late, because that first album was so freaking good, but what was the delay? What took the UK sub so long to finally put out that first album?
Well, I like to think, I'm writing my book at the moment, and we kind of get a lineup, and then someone leaves, And before Nicky joined, there were like 3 guitarists, 3 drummers, a couple of bass players. It was a kind of revolving door, and we just couldn't get going. We attempted to. First of all, in '77, we were on that Roxy, Farewell to the Roxy album, and then the producer from that took us in the studio and tried to make a single out of Stranglehold, which didn't work. And then, we had all these kind of little failures, which was quite good for us in the end.
But it certainly. By the time that album came out, you had 4 hits. From that first album, Another Kind of Blues, and you guys were on top of the pops almost, was it 5 times you were on top of the pops? That's a lot.
Well, I think it's 7.
7. That's a lot for any band.
Yeah. I can't say I know I didn't like it. I did. It was, you're told, tonight you're playing for 15, look into the camera because there might be 200 people in the audience, but there's like 15,000 out there. But I wouldn't do it. I couldn't play to the audience. I couldn't help it.
Well, I think that's one of the things that separated at least you from a lot of other people of the time. Is you had so much experience on stage and in front of audiences that there was a showmanship that I think you had that you didn't necessarily see in a lot of other bands. There was certainly a charisma about watching Charlie Harper perform than, say, like the Buzzcocks, which didn't necessarily have the most exciting stage presence in the world, but it was totally different when you were on stage.
No, they were they're kind of from the north, which is Manchester, and it's a completely different idea. You look at the way they dressed. They didn't dress up, where kind of, I say we didn't dress up, we dressed down, but, I was in love with the Ramones and, just leather jackets and jeans and sneakers, and that was what I was wearing at the time. That's why I just loved them. This is me. This is what I should be doing,
Yeah. What did John Peel mean to you guys? I know he was instrumental in exposing a lot of artists on the BBC, but what did he mean to the UK subs?
Well, if there was anybody responsible for our success, it was him. From the first, even before we met him, when I was playing pub rock, he announced on the radio, "If you want a good night out, go down to the Castle and in South London and see the Marauders." Even before that punk rock kind of hit, he was like, and then. When the Roxy album came out, he kept playing our tracks. Because our songs were like 1.5 minutes. He kept playing both of them. And almost nightly. And our drummer said, you should call him, and let's do a John Peel show, I did, and he was very gracious, and he said, look, come up to the pub and have a chat. And I went up to the pub behind the BBC, and he wanted to manage us. He wanted to put money into us, and he told us we should make a single. And I thought just pop stars made singles. I didn't think it was still early on, and no one. I think the Damned were just making a single. They're the only ones. And then, he kind of pioneered us. He kept playing our stuff. The first album came out, he was playing tracks, and so lots and lots of young kids heard these things. And, I even heard from people coming over from South Africa at the time, and, God, what's this happening in London? And, I had to come to London.
When you guys first came to the United States, where did you come into? Was it New York, or what was that first tour of the U.S. like?
Yeah, New York. I think we spent a couple of weeks in New York, and we went out to Philadelphia, and there's something that happened really kind of strange, is Aswad, a reggae band, which were meant to warm up for the Police, and the Police were already big, I think there was about 79 or 80. And so as we were in New York at the time, they got hold of the UK subs to be the support band. In New York, we kind of we played to, I don't know, about 3,000 people or something like that. And there was about 300 for us, and the rest of the 3,000 were against, And I was having a go at the audience, calling them all sorts of bums, and we're thinking we're going to get slung off the tour right then. And but the police seemed like really pleased. They go, "Yeah, you told them." And then the next day or two, we played Philadelphia in that kind of the radio tower, a huge place. I think it was 7,000 people there.
Wow.
And although the police went down well, but we went down a storm, and then we got thrown off we went down too well, got thrown off the gig. Philadelphia is a tough old town, and they loved us, so it was good. The police were kind of a bit poppy for them, but the people they know what they were seeing and know what they were getting with the police, and they are a great band, really great band. 3 of them, they're brilliant.
But there were a lot of cities and towns that were just simply not ready for punk music at all, and in some ways that hasn't changed all that much. I mean, some certainly have been more, understanding of it or embrace it a little bit more, but it seems to be some, I don't want to say regional because that's probably the wrong way to describe it, but the United States never really caught up to it the way it did in the UK or Australia or some other, parts of the world. So I'm not terribly surprised that, there were some crowds that loved it and some crowds that didn't get it. Yeah, but lucky for us, I mean, we were small enough to just get like 200 or 300 and, good people in, and, we had a good time. I know you guys, you did tour with the Ramones for a while, didn't you?
We toured with the Ramones in Europe, I think that was about 1980, that was almost like a stadium tour, it was.
And did you spend a lot of time with the Ramones, or were they kind of off on their own?
No, it's funny that, because we spent no time with them at all. They didn't spend any time with each other. They just go off with their wives, and they did that. They wasn't even speaking to each other much then. They just went their separate ways. So we only saw them when they were on stage.
Well,
once, of course, every time I went by the dressing room, they were hard at it practicing, and I thought, these guys are brilliant. They're just getting everything, and then, on stage, Joey would count, or Dee Dee would count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they go into a slow song, and the beat, it's got to be, they've just got to go right into a slow song after 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's all practice, and it's jumping on the boxes and jumping off. I thought it was hilarious but amazing. I learned a lot from that tour.
I bet. But on the other hand, maybe it was probably a good idea you didn't hang out with the Ramones. I mean, they certainly had some of their issues. Certainly like Dee Dee's drug problems.
Yeah, later we got. I mean, Dee Dee become quite a friend. He used to call me Charlie Parker. Hey, here's Charlie Parker, which I love because I love Charlie Parker.
Right.
And even Joey, spent a night in a club with Joey. He's a regular good guy. No, never saw the other guys, the drummer or Johnny.
Right.
Johnny was the businessman. He run the thing. The others were like his kind of babies.
And Marky, the drummer, I mean, you talk about a career that guy had. I mean, he had played with Richard Hell, and he played with this band and that band. I mean, he had a hell of a resume on him too.
Yeah, and then he joined the Ramones, and had to drum so simple, couldn't do any splodges.
You talked about all the guys that you had playing in the band, and it's like a list of like 80 different musicians that have played with the UK
That's
subs
right,
in
yeah.
various
You're right there.
in various.
There's that much, yeah. This is like a revolving door. I just can't, I struggle to, get which drummer, and there's drummers and bass players in the very beginning who were still in and out of the band in the 80s, or 90s, like Steve Slack, he came in the band about 4 times. This drummer called Steve J. Jones was helping me out, it was very difficult to keep tabs, and we had a thing like once a sub, always a sub. So you're always there, trying to help me out.
But after 80 guys go through this revolving door, do you ever say to yourself, "Hey, maybe it's me"?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've just been writing about. Some of the bands chucked me out.
Yeah.
I was thrown out. I've thrown out the subs and many bands. Yeah.
You talked about writing a book. How far into that are you? And do you expect?
I'm finished.
Yeah, it's all.
I'm just editing myself, kind of thing. So I'm kind of halfway through editing a couple of months of it, and now I'll give it to the publisher.
I mean, I gotta believe that book would be absolutely fascinating.
Well, I wrote it in kind of like little sections of about 10, 12 lines. Each section is like a little story, but pretty much in order, but it's all little kind of little stories of how we done it, how we goofed up and all sorts. Because it's a real up and down story. It's not like hardship at the beginning and and then suddenly we're there. No, it's like we make it and then we're down and then we're up and down. It's completely a roller coaster.
And I assume that also includes just trying to make it through a pandemic. 200 shows a year, and all of a sudden everything comes to a screeching halt. That has to be just a bizarre change of direction for you. I mean, you got a new record out, you got a book that you're working on, but then all of a sudden, all these dates just evaporate. What was that like?
What we've done, we like there was a big thing in Milan, in like kind of the winter of was it 20, beginning of 2020. We were there, and we have a kind of suspicion we might have got the whole thing really early on, and we come home, and then everything. We come home from the tour, and it was kind of like the best tour we ever done, and we come home from that tour kind of exhausted, and and then everything shut down. And I was quite exhausted. Oh yeah, and I was really ill. Because my wife thinks I got the bug, and it went into pneumonia.
Oh wow!
And I couldn't see the doctor. They were sending me antibiotics and stuff, and I was had painkillers and all sorts. And so I was ill for months. It just lasted months. When I lie down to go to sleep, my lungs were just bubbling, and it wasn't easy to breathe. And my wife had already bought oxygen, and I had an inhaler, and I was real sick for months. So I needed the rest.
Yeah, I would say so. But you got better, and you were able to sing on a new album. Plus, you got your
that was no problem at all. I thought it would be, but it wasn't. It was no, it was. I thought it would. I thought it would be difficult, but it wasn't difficult at all.
Wow. And you've also got something that's out now. Charlie Harper and the Submachine, Panic and Post-War Punks. Tell me about that. That little girl Thunberg. Yeah.
The little Swedish girl who's trying to save the world.
Yeah.
Well, she said in one of the interviews, Someone said, like, don't panic, but we must panic. We're kind of ruining the globe, and you've got to panic. And I thought, that's good. That's so nice. So I wrote the song called Panic. And my grandkid and, his band done one side, which was the Panic side. And they were very kind of modern kind of musicians, young kids. And then the other side, I think, was with the Ramonas, the girl band, the musicians from the bass player, I think.
Well, I
remember now if I might have played the guitar or something. I don't know.
Well, I heard Panic, and I thought it was a really good song. I thought you did a great
you.
job on it.
Yeah, I thought so. So I'd like to play songs which I want to hear over again. Let's hear that again. That's one of them. Very few of my songs, but on this album, I think I've done it as well.
So when do you expect the Reverse Engineering to come out? The new UK Subs record?
Oh, they put it off to next year now. Early next year, I think it's coming out.
Early next year. That's
yeah.
Awesome.
There's a big thing about everyone's looking for vinyl, and there's a big queue in the vinyl factories. Everyone's kind of suddenly vinyl's fashionable, which is something we've always done. We've always put things on colour vinyl as well as black vinyl. And suddenly everyone's wanting vinyl, and so it's been postponed for 6 months, I think.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to read your book, and it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Charlie. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thanks for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast. Let me know what you think. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. Feel free to share it, review it, like it, tell all your friends. Also, check out our updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, too. And thanks again for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.